Good morning and welcome to Viewpoint. Old man Gossett and Mr. Loyd Kirby here, taking care of the fireplace this morning. Put another log on, Loyd.
All righty.
It's a little chilly this morning. Viewpoint, the program of personalities, politicians, and perspectives. We always try to work real hard each week to bring somebody up here of interest. And this morning, I think we've done a good job for you. Loyd, let's go ahead and introduce our guest this morning, sir.
All right. Well, no stranger to folks in Logan County. I believe he's been in business since 1976 with his auction service, as well as serving on the various capacities with the Logan County Fair. Our guest today, Mr. Mike Maske, in the studio.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Well, Mike, I asked you off air. Let's go back a little history here. You said that when you were a young man in high school, you kind of had an auctioneer bug.
Well, I sure did. As a boy, we lived over at Clinton, right next to a livestock sale barn, and we would go there every Friday, and loved it. Just loved the excitement of the livestock and the people in it, and the all the events that went on there, and so that kind of put a little bug in my mind about that. And then the local auctioneer around there was Warren Martin, and Warren was a legend for years and years and years around there, and so everybody wanted to be like Warren Martin, and you went out behind the barn and tried to chant like Warren and use the expressions and the little sayings that he had. But yep, it's been a good occupation for me. And like a guy told me the other day, it was raining real bad, and he said, "Boy, you would have hated to have a sale in this weather." And I said, "I'd rather have a sale in the rain than no sale at all." So,
well, exactly. Yeah. Well, it's auctioneering is a different profession, and we don't know many auctioneers that are active in that. You know, you mentioned sale barns. When I was a kid in high school, even in grade school, where the Logan County Bank is, and I can't remember the bank's name today, but there was a filling station on Bannister and Logan, and they had sale barns there during the Depression, and every Saturday. And we'd go watch these the cattle and so forth being auctioned off. I'd sit on the fence and watch what was going on, and I remember two colonels, Wolpert and Fred Jensen. They were the two auctioneers that I remember. This is the days when the Mother Society would auction off cakes and so forth, and old Colonel Wolpert would hold up that cake in front of it and spit all over it.
That's what they always said, that Colonel Wolpert chewed tobacco, and I don't know if it was on purpose or what, but you gave him about a 3 or 4 foot circle right in front of him, because he was liable to spit right there. But
this was before COVID, and nobody had any masks.
Nobody worried about that. Hey, Bill, I have kind of a little bit of kind of invited a mystery guest up here, because I heard that several times when you had a mystery guest, and I guess he's not showed up yet, so we have to kind of work around that. But I've got a little bit of a description about this guy and some information about him, and don't you tell me who it is until we get done. If you do know, I don't know, but it's a local personality that might. Well, it's a good person. He's a good friend of mine. So let me read these.
Well, we won't hold that against him.
Let me read these descriptions about him and see if you can guess who he was. But
this is something new on Viewpoint, folks.
This is something new on Viewpoint. He's a graduate of Lincoln High School, graduate of Lincoln College and the University of Illinois, in the Army Air Corps for 3 years. He was on the Lincoln Elementary School Board and also the West Lincoln Board, president of Lincoln Chamber and a president of the Lincoln Rotary, treasurer of the hospital for 6 years, coached Pony League and youth football, member of the Masonic bodies, past exalted ruler of the Elks Lodge, chairman of the Crippled Children's Trust, member of the Republican Party, and a 1941 graduate of Lincoln High School. And there he was a member of the Forensic League, assistant sports editor, the debate team, senior play, and his nickname was Soup. Now, Bill Gossett, the $64,000 question is, who am I describing?
Jim and I agree, just exchange looks. I said, where did you get all this information? Did my mother write that for you?
No, but it's all public information.
Where did that appear?
I'll give you a copy of it later. But ladies and gentlemen, this is Bill Gossett. This is my good friend Bill Gossett. And you look down this list of all the accomplishments, and one thing you see is giving to other people. And so, Bill, I wanted to have a first on your show, actually interviewing you, because you've been a good friend of mine and close to my heart for so many years. And we need to acknowledge good people and not the characters. We need to acknowledge the good people. So my hat's off to you, and thank you so very much. But I still want to know, why did they call you Soup in high school?
Well, I'm very humbled by that, Mike. Seriously, I'm reaching a stage. I've got about another year to go, and I'm going to get the big century mark. That's kind of interesting. You brought all that up.
October 28th, to be correct.
October 28th, it's coming up. Yeah, well, but that'll be 99. I still got a year to work on. I'm going to work on that too. My brother up and left us, and he left me the oldest in the family, still alive. So I'm going to carry that on for a little while with God's grace, and I mean that's very sincerely. He's been very good to me, and I'm very appreciative of that. Well, Soup, that came from my father. He was a catcher, quite a baseball player in his younger days, semi-pro and that sort of thing. And somebody called him Scoop because he scooped the ball out of the dirt, and somehow that got morphed into Soup, and there it was. And he was Soup, and I was Little Soup, and so I've carried that for 99 years.
Oh, golly. Well, I imagine if you graduated in 1941, then probably about 1938 when you started your freshman year, and old W.C. Hanlon was the principal there.
Yeah.
And I knew those Hanlons from down in that Lake Fork area, and they were all related. And he was a pretty dominating figure. Oh. What did a freshman in high school think when he walked in there and saw big old W.C. Hanlon?
Well, I'll tell you what I thought. I don't get in trouble with him because I'm in twice as much trouble at home. Because I was told that by my father. My father had been to him, believe it or not.
Had he really?
Yeah, really. And he says, I'm going to tell you something about Mr. Hanlon. He's tough, but he's fair. Don't you dare get in trouble with him, or you're twice as much trouble at home. And I marched to that drum for 4 years. Anyway, back to the auctioneer business, Mike.
No. I've got just a couple. I've got just a couple more questions. But
who's the interviewee here?
Who's the interviewee? That's right. Today changed. So John McCullough's dad, Mark, was a teacher.
Yes, my math teacher, and a very, very, very nice man, strict as could be, but he was well respected, and rightfully so, because he'd bat him around.
See, he started there teaching in that Mount Pulaski area, and when those McCullough boys were younger, they went to school at Mount Pulaski. Mm-hmm. And so the story was that there were a pair of Dibert boys and a pair of McCullough boys sitting on the curb right uptown, just crying their eyes out. And they said, "What's wrong with you boys?" He said, "My dad just took a teaching job at Lincoln, and we've got to move to Lincoln."
Well, I thought this was going to be about auctioneering this morning.
Yeah, that's right. It kind of is. Hey, so when did Gene Brown come into the picture?
Well, that was let's see, that would be 47. And a friend of ours, mutual friend, former friend. No, he said, you called me one night and said, "You know Jean Brown?" I said, "Yeah, I know who she is." I said, "Well, get a date and we'll all go over to Havana together. And that Morphus took, and we were married in 49.
Oh boy!
So we went together for a long time before we decided to tie it up.
Were you in school together at the? I mean, were you about the same age?
No. I'm much older than she is. She's 96.
Okay. Oh dear. Oh dear.
We just got that out.
That's okay. So then you went to Lincoln College, and then were you drafted in the Air Corps?
No,
or did you
I
enlist?
went to Lincoln College a year, and then I knew I was going to enlist. I decided I was going to enlist December 7th, and I knew that I was going to tie up. Anyway, I wanted to get a little bit of time in at the University of Illinois, and I went over there in 42 and enlisted on that campus there. And I guess that was October 12th of 1942. I remember the date. And the guy who took my oath of office when I enlisted, I put my arm down. He says, "Well, son, you're ours now." And I remember that very vividly. So I had I went into active service. This is supposed to be about my
That's exact. This is kind of about
I went
me.
into active for February of 43 and came out in February of 46.
Okay, and then you were in France.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway,
Where was your base? Where was your
Orbe Field, which was the O'Hare of France. It was a huge airfield. Yeah. We were there as soon as we kicked the Germans north.
Yeah, I had several friends that were with bomb groups that were stationed in England, and I just can't imagine the thousands and thousands of planes that were ferried across there, and then just look up in the sky, and it was just full of planes.
An amazing time. Did you pay on the payroll, Jim?
I'll put that in. So
he's got notes. I'm sitting here going. I'm sitting here driving blind.
Okay, one of the things in this 1941 Lincoln Yearbook, it says Bill Gossett excels in, and the word is spreading it. Now, what do you think? You spreading the rumors, or what did you do there?
Well, I was taught by my grandfather about spreading BS.
And it says where he's found in other people's hair. So,
well, I was like the president. I like to smell people's hair.
Okay.
That'll have to be my answer to that.
All right. So, and then I didn't even
sit back and enjoy the ride, Loyd.
Then I didn't even read the list of all the professional accomplishments that you had with your dry cleaning business. You know that there were quite a few of those things in there, and you were president of the Dry Cleaners Association for quite a while.
Yeah, state association. May I have just a quick minute to
Sure can.
Side issue there. Well, the national convention, the National Dry Cleaners Association, used to have conventions in nice places like Cancun and Miami Beach and Las Vegas and places like that. And so the year I was state president, they were going to Las Vegas. And I said to the board, why don't we see if we can charter a DC-9 and fill it up with dry cleaners. And if we don't have actual number, we'll have our friends go as guests. So Darrell Klink went as my corporate attorney, and Lou Johnson went as my business manager. So anyway, to the point of the story, my brother was an aircraft controller. And I got to the flight attendant, and I gave her my card, and I said, my brother's a controller, and I have no idea whether we're flying under his jurisdiction or if he's working. She said, well, let me see. And in about a half hour, she came back and says, the captain would like to come, want to know if you would come up on the flight deck. Well, that was a big deal. So I went up there, and he says, your brother's working, he doesn't know you're aboard, you want to surprise him. So from 38th or whatever 1,000 feet up between Chicago and Las Vegas, I got to talk to my brother in Denver, Colorado.
Oh, dear.
And that was a big deal.
Two Gossett boys in the air at the same time.
Let's get to the auction business.
Okay. I've surprised you enough, so
Yes,
I'll let you be the interviewer. So
I was going to say, do you have your Social Security card? We can put you on the payroll.
yeah, I will. I'll leave a bill.
Seriously, young man in formative years, high school, and you decided that auctioneering thing kind of appealed to you. And so at what point in your life then do you go to the actual auctioneering school?
I went to school in 1976, and it was a 2-week school. And the funny thing about that, they had local auctioneers and then some nationally known people come in and teach 2 classes a year. But the funny thing about this was every morning to prepare, you would get up and say, the first man, and y'all had signed seats, and the first person would say, my name is Bill Gossett from such and such, from Lincoln, Illinois. And then the next guy would get up and say, my name is Mike Maske from Mount Pulaski, Illinois. First guy would say, and then you would start over, and before it was all over with, you had 40 different people, and by rote memory, you knew everybody that was there. So, and the names and where they're from. So, years later, and I don't have a very good memory at all, but I can probably tell you 3/4 of the people that were in that class. So, you fast forward then to about 4 or 5 years ago, and I was at a little town called Moments and looking at a grain elevator to sell. And when I was coming through the country, there was a sign on a mailbox that said Marcotte. So I called Bill Marcotte and I said, hey, I'm here south of Moments, and I've gone past 2 mailboxes that said Marcotte. He said, well, if you keep on going, there'll be another one. He said, that's my family. So and he told me the little town that he was from, so I just figured I'd just drive to that little town just to see if his name was on a water tower. And I came by this little town of Papineau. Well, it happened that Papineau was one of the towns from one of the guys that I was in school with. His name was Homer Caldwell, Papineau, Illinois. And if there was any mischief going on in that class, it was with Homer. And Homer was probably in his 40s then. And so I drove through the little town, and they had a grocery store and an elevator and a gas station. And I stopped by the gas station, and the guy said, I said, do you know Homer Caldwell? He said, no, I don't, but the guys at the elevator would. So I went over to the elevator and said, do you guys know Homer Caldwell? He said, yeah, he's passed away, but he said they used to live just right over here by this grain bin, and he had the meanest doggone kids in town, because when we'd be dumping beans in the fall, those kids would crawl up on top of the garage roof and throw walnuts down at us. So that's off the subject, but anyway, we did a
lot of that this morning.
Yeah, that's right. Went to that school, and for the then in 1976 was the first year that I sold at the Logan County Fair Livestock Auction, and have been.
That was your first experience as professionally?
Yes, and have been selling there, with maybe 1 or 2 exceptions every year since. So I'm tickled about that, to be able to help those people in our community and sometimes now this is the second and not quite the third generation, but of those 4-H'ers. So I'm proud of that. So
I always thought that an auctioneer had to be something of an actor as well as a good. Crying an auction is a true art, and it takes a lot of practice. You just can't get out of the bathroom and say, I'm going to be an auctioneer.
Well, I think the big thing with that is you have to be able to exchange those bids. You have to know what you're selling, but have to be able to exchange those bids, and the people have to be able to clearly hear what you're saying. Now, you might sound like a machine gun, but that guy that sounds like a machine gun, unless he's selling to professional buyers, they don't understand what he's saying. Mm-hmm. So sometimes the slower that you can go within reason, and so that you can be heard, if you're selling to farmers that come to a sale every day, it's different. You have a different chant than if you would be selling to little ladies and selling their fruit jars and Tupperware.
My first experience with auctioneers was during the Depression, and Loyd does. A lot of folks lost farms in those times, and they'd have courthouse sales. And I remember very vividly watching a man the tears running down his cheeks. But they were auctioning his land. And I walked away from there with a profound sense of sorrow.
Yeah.
And this was in probably 37, something like that. And the man lost his, and a lot of people did, they lost their ground. And auctioneers would cry it out on the courthouse steps. And I remember men with some money would stand in the background, and Mike would cry, and they'd just stand there. The smart ones would just stand there and maybe nod their head a little bit, almost.
I know that, yeah.
And it was quite an experience for a kid to watch. The auctioneer has to have a quick mind, a facile mind, and good eyes, because he's got to have somebody watching for the bidders.
Mm-hmm. And it's something how the more nervous that people get, the higher the dollar values get, the difference they in their bidding. Mm-hmm. When it's $5 or $10, they're bid like a rooster like a rooster flopping his arms and getting ready to crow. But the higher the increments get, the less they move their bid, or the it's just, instead of a nod, it's just maybe just a small nod and everything, because everybody's nervous. Everybody gets nervous, the auctioneer and the bidder, so we're I'm just thankful that this is the vocation that I've ended up with.
You mentioned you started out at the auction school. It was a 2-week experience, you said?
2-week experience,
So
yes.
what kind of a curriculum do they have at an auction school?
They taught things like insurance and contracts and advertising and let's see, obviously the bid chant, but ethics and just things that here's a business. That was before anybody talked about a business plan, but they gave you a business plan, and we talked about accounting and managing money and stuff like that, and it was kind of a primer, a real fast track in how to stay in the business. And they told us at the time that 90% of the people that went to that class would probably never be in the business, but
And speaking of staying in the business, once again, we got all carried away with a mystery guest here, and we didn't get to our sponsor, so we'll go right ahead, Mr. Ash. And right back live here in the studios of WLCN, and get a little tongue-tied that got blindsided early in the program. Off air, we were talking about auctioneering and land values, Mike. What was the land value that you would cry an auction for when you got started as a young auctioneer?
In that teens, $2,000 an acre. In the mid-teens, $2,000 an acre.
And what's the highest you have auctioned off a piece of land for now in your career?
$18,300 an acre. But I'm telling you, Bill, in my opinion, that's not good for anybody. Because just look what that does. It raises the cash rents for those people that cash rent, the real estate taxes, but you either have to be in the middle of it scrapping around, or you have to just step aside and let somebody else do it. So, we're everything is changing. Every generation changes, and yourself, when you first started having children, there were people that were older than you that said, I'd hate to raise a child in this economy or these times.
Yeah.
Well, when you're that age, you don't know any different, so you raise them and have a good time, but you sure aren't going to have them 50 years later. And I think the farming is that same way right now. It's just
incredible. A young man who wanted to start farming, unless he has family ground somewhere, it's almost impossible for him to be a farmer.
Yes.
Not only the $18,000 an acre, but the cost of machinery. It's just incredible.
Everything is expensive now, though, when you think about it. And and not too long ago, if you had $1 million saved up, $1 million was a lot of money, and you were going to survive on it. Now, if you take $1 million and look to try to live on it for the next 40 years, that's going to be tough. And a lot of us don't have $1 million saved up. So, things are different, but we'll survive.
648-5510. 648-5510. Our guest this morning, Mr. Mike Maske, ledger domain that he performs as he auctions people's land off, or not necessarily land, physical properties.
I sell fruit jars and Tupperware quite a bit, but there's a need for things like that, and I've had so many people that were good friends of mine that would come and say, Mike, we've sold our house, we're moving into the nursing home, or we're moving into the congregate building or something like that, and we need to sell some items of personal property, and it's not going to bring anything, but you got to help them, because what are they going to do?
Yeah.
How are they going to get rid of it? Other than, my kids, the standing joke with them is, we're going to call Jim Boy Coogan, and he's going to dig a big deep hole, and what doesn't burn of my stuff, they're going to bury.
Well, I experienced that when Gene and I moved into the Christian Village. Very happy out there, by the by. But we had to downsize, got a lot of things go. For instance, one thing, we were fortunate enough to do quite a bit of traveling. And I had this projector and about 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 trays of slides and so forth. And I said, I just had to take a hard look. I said, nobody else is going to be interested in it, and I'm sure not going to get the things out. So the slides went down the alley in the dump truck.
Yeah.
And it hurt. But you have to make decisions in life. And an auctioneer, in many cases, can be a real outlet for. Some people have some very valuable things stuck aside.
Yes, there are, and there are a lot of things that are that have society has changed, and my children are 42, 40, and 38, and their tastes are not what their mothers or grandmothers were, and I know a lot of young families that don't have formal dining rooms. They don't have a china cabinet and a dining room table or anything like that. So if they don't have that, they don't have linens and silver and everything that would go along china, and those place settings of china that people were giving $200 a place setting for, now the whole set of 8 is worth $50. So, and the people that are buying that are our age and older. They're not the young ones, because and no disrespect to them at all, but the younger people don't want what mom and grandma had. So by doing that, it just makes it a little bit cheaper.
When you look out at the sea of faces as you're at an auction site somewhere, Mike, do you often see the same faces that kind of make the
see the same faces that filter in and out, but the color of the hair is a lot of times pretty gray,
or white,
and but it's a social event, and so many times, and that's what I keep telling a lot of people about, especially about farm machinery sales. This farmer has worked 40, 50 years to acquire this farm machinery, and it's like part of his family. And online sales are really, really big right now, because you sell it online, take the highest bid, and then the new buyer comes in and picks it up, and it's gone. But what that does is it does not become a social event then. It's kind of the easiest way to get it done, and you see that farmer that was should have had some accolades for what he put together and what he did. He doesn't have those 300 or 400 people come and say, "Oh, Bill, you did a good job. Boy, you've got a nice line of equipment." And it's we have kind of not really given him his graduation party. You see what I'm saying about that? It's if you have a live auction, and you can have live and online auctions in conjunction, and we do that on a regular basis. But if you don't have the people standing out in the crowd and saying, "Boy, Bill, you did a good job," it's kind of a hollow retirement, and because I know that of the many sales that I've had for these gentlemen that are retiring, there's a lot of people that come there just to see their friend or their customer, the fertilizer guy from the fertilizer plant or the bank or the insurance. They came and say, "Oh man, you had a good sale," and they swell the crowd. But without having that public auction, it just makes it a little hollow, But
is there one item in particular down through your career, Mr. Maske, that you remember as being an unusual item that you sold?
Well, two things that I remember. And one was I was a page in the Capitol for 2 summers when I was in high school. And you know how they get to banter back and forth, and so the last day of the session, and I'm not going to tell you which party that was in control, but it was in the Illinois House, so you can kind of probably figure it out. Anyway, I sold there was one of the representatives that made a comment that they needed 50 gallons of jelly to make sure that bill passed. So I sold. From the clerk's podium at the House sold 50 pounds of jelly to solve that, to make that bill go through. And then another time, and this was the one that almost makes you tear up. We had a benefit sale, and somebody brought a box full of puppies. And so all the way through this whole sale, I could see this little boy playing with these puppies, and just loved them and hugged them and everything. And they sold all but one of them off, during the day. So this little boy still played with the remaining puppy. And there was another young kid came in there, and he had his new bike and his new clothes and everything. And the little boy that was playing with the puppy, it was obvious that he didn't have everything that everybody else did. So one of the last items was this puppy. And so the little boy's parents started bidding on it, and then the person that had the money, the little boy's parents that had the money, they started bidding on it too. Well, it was obvious that the first little boy that played with it all day was not going to be successful. He wasn't going to be successful. And out of the crowd, a farmer friend of mine saw what was going on, and he bid on that. And I think he gave $200 for a little mongrel mutt. And when it was all said and done, he took that puppy over and gave it to that little boy. And I don't know what happened to it afterwards, but he was a proud little guy, because he had a companion, at least for as long as the dog lived.
Neat human interest story.
Yep.
I'm sure you see a lot of that unusual things as you stand in front of people. Do you get pretty good crowds coming and watching? How's the attendance at open air auctions?
Well, it's been tremendous. We shut down for over a year when with COVID. Mm-hmm. Actually quit about March. We had a sale scheduled for Hoblet seed corn up here in March of that year, and then did not have another live auction until a year later in September. But and that made an impact for everybody. But I think things are back right now. We had the sale for Lincoln College this Saturday, and we had a tremendous crowd. I mean, it was just huge. So for whatever reason, everybody is kind of getting back into the swing of things, and hopefully this will be the last of it, and we can make it through so everybody can visit and go to social
Well, if Fauci
events.
would keep his doggone mouth shut, things would be a lot better.
What's that?
I thought if Dr. Fauci would keep his mouth shut, stay off television, everybody would be a lot happier.
Oh, golly.
Yeah, I've seen your name in the paper here recently for a couple things. You mentioned the Lincoln College auction, but weren't you also the auctioneer out at the Pink Pumpkin charity
Pink
event
Pumpkin.
as well?
Those girls do such a good job. Karen Hargis and that whole bunch, and the people at Collision Concepts, they do such a good job to put that together, and everything everything goes to the Cancer Society, and it gets bigger every year. What I was going to say, and there it just went. It just left. But no, they do a good job. I think $22,000 is what they raised in that hour and a half.
Well, that's marvelous.
For the American Cancer Society, and they are believers, and it will be that there will be a cure, and the cure will be because of these small benefits like this, where these people with a passion come and donate their time and their talent to help eradicate this disease.
And you also mentioned the Lincoln College auction. I would imagine that had to be, like, how do you go about organizing and getting set for that? I would think that's a pretty
there
onerous
was a lot
process.
of organization done by the employees, the remaining employees there. They worked so hard for the weeks prior to that. In fact, they're still working on that, and collecting the money and things like that. But that was a challenge, because here you had a warehouse full of parts and supplies and everything like that to keep that facility going, So, and a lot of that stuff would be good for commercial, like restaurants or motels or something like that. But the average person could use a fraction of it. But there are 3 pallets of copy paper. Well, the average person won't use a pallet of copy paper the rest of their life, So but those girls, they came together, or those people came together, and that staff there in the maintenance and the lawn and grounds, they did such a good job, and I'm just happy to be associated with them. And even the trustees came out there the morning of the sale. There were a half a dozen trustees pulling stuff out and lining it up and working hard and taking direction, and so I was impressed by the whole bunch.
Mr. Maske, your profession, do you see, is there going to be growth in the auctioneering profession? Are there other schools that are on the horizon somewhere that will help train auctioneers?
Well, I think, I've got a couple passions, but one of them is fairs and one of them is auctions. And I think they're both not really in their twilight, but they're both kind of on a downward course at this time with the advent of the internet and a person's ability to effectively market their own personal property or automobiles or anything on an internet platform, or a local site or eBay or anything like that. That kind of takes away from the auction itself, but I still have to believe that the social event that the auction creates, that people want to go out. Number one, they want to go through and root through boxes and everything like that. Mm-hmm. They want to be with their friends. They want to get lunch at a good lunch stand, and I have to believe that will continue, but it's going to change. And the reason I say it's going to change, every little community 50, 60 years ago had a sale barn, had a livestock sale barn. Mm-hmm. Now, your closest livestock sale barn is Congerville or Rushville or anything like that. So that stuff is going to change, and we evolve into something different. We don't know what it's going to be like, but and the fairs are the same way. We have a good, strong fair. The Logan County Fair is one of the strongest and cleanest fairs in the state. When in 1937, and like you said, Bill, your father purchased a share of stock in 1937. In 1937, when that was incorporated, we didn't have the big commercial domes or theaters or whatever in Bloomington or Champaign or Peoria, where you could see the latest and greatest country music show, or you could see the big farm machinery or anything like that. You had to go to the fair to see this. Now you can get on your phone and see it all, or you can drive to Peoria to the farm show, or you can hear a country music show in Champaign at the auditorium. And so we're making our country smaller with the communication of our phones and stuff like that, and the ability to get anything at any one time. And it's kind of like encyclopedias. For so many years, people would save to buy a brand new set of World Book encyclopedias. I can't sell an encyclopedia right now. And it's terrible to say, but the thing that you do is take them and put them in the dumpster, because that information on that encyclopedia, somebody will pick up their phone and find it out quicker than it would be going over to the book and opening it up and trying to rifle through and find out what it is. So it's changing. We're all changing, but hopefully it's for the better.
648-5510. You just have about 30 seconds or so. If you want a question, maybe you want to have thinking about having an auction, Mr. Maske can tell you exactly how to set that up and what your chances are for having a decent auction. 648-5510. Mike, do you have any closing comments to make? You worked towards that just a couple of seconds ago.
I sure do. I sure do. My good friend Soup. I'll remember that for the rest of my life. Soup Gossett. Now that will be for another program.
Yeah. Well, this is supposed to be interesting, and that would not be that interesting. So I don't think.
Bill, I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and appreciate you letting me put some of that information on about yourself, and you've been gracious about it, and thank you so very much. And this biography that I put together, it just tickles me, because you wrote this years back, but the very bottom of it said a member of the Republican Party. So I imagine you sit there, and before you go to sleep, and you kiss Gene goodnight, and then you look up there at that picture of Ronald Reagan and salute him, and then,
I still think
then go to sleep.
Men we had in the White House.
I think
He was a great communicator.
That's exactly right.
Which is, well, I'm not going to know. I want to keep my job, so
we'll do it. We'll do what we got to do. Thank you so very much, Bill.
Thank you, Mike Maske, for being with us this morning. And of course,